Good morning. We're going to get right to the show this morning because we have a lot of conversations to have, especially with our first guest. So here's the very quick setup, because if you've been watching the news, perhaps you or someone in your family is looking to buy or sell a house. Now all of a sudden things are looking very, very different, and as if home buying wasn't complicated enough already, it's becoming a little bit murkier now. So here to kind of help us dispel some rumors and hopefully give us a little bit of calm and peace is Charlotte Maby with the Charlotte Maby team. Good to see you.
Good morning, good morning.
So this is the first I'm hearing about it. My oldest brother and I were having a conversation. They're considering moving to Augusta, Georgia, near his family. And yesterday I talked to David and he said, you know, I'm not even sure we're going to sell in Atlanta anymore because of, quote, this new law. Right. So this might be unfamiliar to a lot of people, Charlotte. Well, what's going on?
And it isn't law yet. It is strictly a settlement to a class action suit that's being discussed and has been negotiated, but has not been signed off on by a judge yet. But as we all know, there's no news like bad news, right? And
yeah.
So the rumors and the supposed law or whatever, nothing is settled yet. So it is a little bit of the wild, wild west. And if I may, I'd love to give a little bit of a backstory as to how we got to this.
Yes,
that maybe help understand.
But before, I want to go to the end chapter
Sure.
real quickly to make sure that people watch and read the whole book.
Absolutely.
Because what this means, if it does become law, is that the old days of a seller paying the closing costs and then the realtor fees for both agents, if you're looking to buy a house, potentially you're going to have to.
They still can do that, but there's no guarantee that they will.
So you could potentially, as a buyer, have to pay that up front. Okay, so now
Correct.
you tell the story.
Right. So back in the day, prior to 1990, so back in the good old days or whatever, it was what we call buyer beware. Mm-hmm. If there was a real estate agent involved, typically they were helping the seller sell the property. And I would encourage people to watch, there's an old Andy Griffith thing out there where Barney decides he wants to be a real estate agent. And it's a great example of buyer beware. And that's what we always did buying houses back then. In the 1990s, this thing called buyer agency came about, where the buyer said, hey, I want an agent to represent my best interest. Mm-hmm. And so typically agents have been compensated. It's all commission and it's always been negotiable. In spite of what you might hear on the news, our commissions have always been negotiable. And so, and it's living on commission, it's not a salary. Right. So what typically happened was the seller and the seller's agent said, hey, the seller's going to pay this amount of money, and we agree that we're going to give a portion of that to an agent who's kind enough to work with and represent the buyer and help them get through the process. Mm-hmm. And so the result of this class action lawsuit, it started with, they felt like, this person did, that the fees given to a buyer's agent, a buyer's representative, were not transparent. And so...
And by the way, the person who filed this, even though it's class action, were they the seller or the buyer?
I don't know for sure. I think they were the buyer, but I apologize, I don't know that for sure.
That's okay. I just don't see why that wouldn't have been transparent if they're the buyer.
Like I say, that was where it came from.
Sorry.
And so the result of this is going to be what we call the decoupling of commissions, assuming this is signed off on. Again, remember, this is fluid. It's the wild, wild west right now. We don't know, the agents even don't know for sure. But in theory, what will happen is that you as a buyer, if you want to buy a property, there is no guarantee any longer that the seller will cover or pay for the commission for you as a buyer's representative, as a buyer's agent. So as a buyer, if you want an agent to represent you, there is a chance you will have to pay them yourself.
Okay, so a timeline here. This goes before a judge
It has been agreed to in negotiation, but the judge has not signed off on it. That's scheduled to happen in July of this year.
Federal judge?
A federal judge.
Okay. If it's a federal law,
correct. Again, there are state laws associated with that, and this class action is with a trade organization, not with a state law or federal laws, right?
Okay.
It's with a process. And so it won't change the state laws, but it will change how things are done. And so the process will be, if you want to see a house, you call on 123 Main Street and say, hey, I'd like for somebody to show that house to me. That agent will call the person who is working with the seller and say, is the seller offering any compensation to a buyer's representative? And let's say they say no. Then I will be disclosing to this person who wants to see 123 Main Street, here's what I charge to show you that property. Here's what I charge to help you buy that property. And you will have to agree in writing to either pay that or try to get it negotiated somehow before I can show you that property.
Okay, let's go with that for just a second. First of all, when you are a buyer as it stands right now, you have the great luxury of looking at as many houses as you want to. So now you want to go to 123 Main Street, and let's just pretend that the listing price for that house is $400,000. You as the buyer's agent in this equation can't know yet how any of the negotiations are going to go, if they will even choose to make an offer on 123 Main Street. So are you charging, I'll make it up, but let's just say you said I'll charge you $500 to show you that house.
That may happen. We may see that along the way.
So then you have a la carte, you're going to pay more.
Right. You potentially will pay more. And if the seller of a property is not offering a buyer's agent compensation, then the buyer, if they want this person, and a good example is, for example, I worked with someone this week that called me about a property, been on the market, and in 30 minutes I helped him realize why he didn't want to buy this. Now I wasn't compensated for that, but my knowledge, he said, oh, I found the perfect piece of property. Well, in 30 minutes I was able to discern that he can't build what he wants to on there, and what everybody wants to build on there, you can't. It looked like it was on the lake, but it really wasn't. And so I helped him to find out all of those things. That's my skill set, but he didn't pay me for that this time because I just did that for him as a favor. I only get paid if he buys the property.
But wouldn't this almost work in direct opposition to the notion of buyer beware? Because if you're now the buyer's agent, the only way you're going to make your money is to encourage someone to buy a house.
Correct. And you know, absolutely. And there will be buyers who say, you know, I don't have the money to pay my own agent, so I'll just go to the agent who represents the seller. Well, now we're back to buyer beware, right? Because
only one person's
only one person is interested. And as a seller, we still will be encouraging our sellers to pay those buyer agent commissions because it is in their best interest for them to work with a buyer who is represented by another agent who has that buyer's wishes and all at heart.
Well, okay, not only that, let's pretend I wanted to sell my house. First of all, can I disclose in putting my house on the market, seller is paying
We are no
fees?
longer allowed to put any commissions in MLS per this ruling.
So there's no way to know.
There is no way to know unless we call. I'm sure there'll be ways to figure that out. But again, we can't put things in agent remarks that are not in public remarks because that goes against the transparency.
Okay, so again, pretend I'm selling my house though. If I do not pay the buyer agent fees, I'm going to have a diminished pool of people looking at my house.
Potentially so.
So is this, without getting political, an effort to try to bring, theoretically, to bring housing prices down because are people thinking that people are inflating the asking price of their house to cover those commissions?
Well, potentially so. There's a lot of push today in this world of the internet to get between the consumer and the product, right? And real estate is no different. And if you think about it, and again, I'm going to step out right here and be political a little bit, there are companies that would rather see us all rent than buy.
Oh, yeah.
And owning a home is part of the American dream. And for most of us, the way that we grow our net worth and grow our ability to have something for our future is in the value of our home that we own. And if we're kept away or if that's slowed down or we inhibit people's opportunity to own real estate, that's a problem.
Okay, I've got to wrap it up. I know you do a lot of educational things.
Sure.
Are you planning anything?
Absolutely. We've already been talking about this some. For anyone that has a question, please call me. I'm glad to walk you through it, talk you through it. Again, it is still evolving. July of 2024, we'll know more.
And is there anything people can do if they want to have their voice heard? Can they write in?
I would say definitely talk to your Congress people, your representatives, and say, hey, I don't get this, I don't understand. But things will definitely change.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here's where you'll find her on North Access Road, or simply her website, charlottemabriteam.com. Not looking to come between the product and the consumer on that one. Thank you.